Hello, welcome to another episode of Field of Screams podcast. Today we will be ranking the Friday the 13th series. There's 12 films in this franchise. We started off with Jason Voorhees' mother, and we went to space, we went to hell, we went to Manhattan, and we were rebooted. We went against Freddy Krueger. All kinds of adventures so far, going over this franchise. But today, we will rank them all. Now, after I made my list, I reached out on social media, on Twitter, through the YouTube account. I went on Reddit, and the people that are on the Friday the 13th subreddit, they are so kind and so helpful. So, shout out to them. But I've gotten some feedback on also what some of their rankings are. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to see my list and see how it compares to others. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the worst movies first, and then we're going to work our way up the list. And again, these are just my opinion. If your opinion is different than mine, that is perfectly fine. Feel free to comment, what your ranking is underneath this video. That's always fun, compare and contrast. But again, this is just my opinion. So let's start with the first one, the very worst movie in the Friday the 13th franchise. And my worst film would have to be Jason Goes to Hell. Now this movie, let's give some credit where it's due. Jason does look cool when he is in this movie. But the problem is, it's about only like 5 minutes of content. We get Jason in the beginning, we get Jason at the end. He looks cool when he's around. The very beginning scene with the CIA, that's really cool stuff. They blow him up. Great beginning. But then it's everything in between. The whole body snatcher angle of people transferring the little poop worm from mouth to mouth. It didn't feel like a Friday the 13th movie. It was a really ambitious film. I'll give it credit for that. But then it just starts going into straight up silly territory. The final girl, she gets like that special dagger sword, like it came from Power Rangers, like it's like magical. And then we got the Duke character who just knows all this lore about Jason for really no reason. And it just comes from left field. We get the Necronomicon. This thing's just a crazy film. Again, kudos for creativity, but it's gotta be the worst one for me. A lot of the people that reached out, this film was also the last film in a lot of their list. It was basically the last film in all of them except about 4 or 5, and of those 4 or 5, Jason Goes to Hell comes in at 11 for 2 of them, and then there's an 8 and a 9, and then there's a brave soul who said it is the second best film of the franchise. Very brave take, I will give that to them. So with Jason Goes to Hell coming at number 12, my number 11th ranked movie, and this might be controversial to some people, but the 11th best Friday the 13th film is the very first Friday the 13th film for me. Now granted, this film started the entire franchise, so you gotta give kudos to it for that. It did launch 11 different sequels. Not bad, not bad. But, this film, A, it doesn't have Jason Voorhees in it till the very last jump scare. B, it's a whodidit film, but they kind of copped out when they did the whodidit angle. It probably would have been a little cooler if it was one of the camp counselors, but instead we got Pamela Voorhees, who doesn't really show up at all throughout the entire movie till the very end, just for the reveal. And I know we get the little ghost story of how the kid died and all that, but are people really sitting in theaters going, oh, when they told that ghost story about the kid drowning, I bet his mom's going to come in, and I bet the mom's the killer. It's just kind of cheating the whodidit type movie. And honestly, I just find this movie just kind of boring. You could say it fits in with the times. A lot of people say Halloween is a slower film. But I just think this film is not very well done now. When I go back to watch it, I kind of find it boring. It's cool that it has Kevin Bacon in it, but he doesn't do a whole lot. He gets stabbed through the neck. But I just find this a hard film to return to. All the other bad films, at least they have just kind of silly things that make me laugh. But this film, again, is just kind of a snoozer for me. There's a lot of times where there's scenes of camp counselors just sitting around playing cards. I don't know. It's the second worst movie of the franchise for me. And the people that reached out, I mean, those answers are kind of scattered. Some people have it in the top 5, some people have it in the bottom 5. I think it's just a very polarizing film. So that was my ranking for number 11. My ranking for number 10 is Jason Takes Manhattan. Now, with Jason Takes Manhattan, there are really goofy parts, and there are some good parts in this film. The boxing scene on the rooftop, very cool scene. I mean, that guy takes it to Jason, and that's a scene that we really haven't seen. We've never seen a character fist fight Jason and actually hit him a whole lot and push him to the edge of a building. That was cool to see. And there's some really funny parts. I mean, even when I was reviewing it, the very end where the toxic waste comes into the sewer and Jason's like yelling mommy and vomiting everywhere and it just looks super goofy. That cracked me up. Jason punting a boombox, that's classic. And really anything that happened in New York City. Those were really cool scenes and really well done. But I think the problem for me is it's just there's too much of the movie that takes place on a boat. And when it's on a boat, like there's not a lot that happens. To me it's boring. The kills, there's a lot of off-screen kills in this movie and it just really cheapens it for me. So when I think of Jason Takes Manhattan, I mean there's goofy moments, there's cool moments. But at the end there's just too much weird and cheap things going on. The little kid that the final girl sees, I mean, he changes every other scene. I think one of them, he looks Asian. So yeah, not a very well done movie. But if you like it, I understand it. There was a lot of people that said that they loved Jason Takes Manhattan. I get it. It's cheesy. It can be fun, but for me, it's just not for me. So that's why it's at number 10. My number 9 ranking will be Friday the 13th, Part 7, New Blood. Now this film was kind of a hard one to place. I switched it around with Jason Takes Manhattan a little bit. There's parts I like. I like the idea of Carrie versus Jason. It's very interesting. Whenever a friend told me about it before I had seen it, he was like, oh, it's not a very good movie. It's like Carrie versus Jason. I'm like, what? That sounds awesome. And I really wanted to watch it. But I think just the characters don't really stand out a whole lot. And the MPAA cut out a ton of kills. You can tell they had really good ideas, and I'm sure the stuff they filmed was great. I mean, I've seen snippets of it to where they had lots of blood, but unfortunately it got cut down so much that the kills, I mean, Jason's holding some of the coolest weapons we see in the franchise. But by the time he kills them, like, it's off-screen kills. So it's like, oh, he's got this cool-looking blade or cool-looking machine here, and then he goes to use it, and then it just cuts away. And it's like, what? Really? But the final fight between him and the final girl, I think that's what really sells this movie. And that's what I like about it. I mean, I think the ending's just really cool. Kane Hodder about risked his life doing this movie. I think it was like an entire porch or cabin like fell on top of him. If you watched a behind the scenes documentary, you know what I'm talking about. He gets literally smashed. Great stuff, big explosions. Everything's exploding. Jason looks like this creepy goblin thing with his hockey mask off. It's entertaining, but it's definitely flawed. So that's why it's at number 9. My number 8 is Jason X. Now, everything before this movie, 9 through 12, I kind of find them kind of a slog to get through. But I think this is kind of the beginning of the movies where I think are more fun to watch. I had a lot of fun watching Jason X. Jason X was really kind of a silly film. It knew what it was doing. It knew it was the 10th movie. So it just went full on cheese. We get some just space, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever you want to call it, looking stuff. There's even some elements of Alien in the film whenever the soldiers are going through everything. I like the characters a lot in this movie. Even the little subplot of the guy who falls in love with the android, I mean, it's kind of funny, but you like the two characters. Uber Jason looks really cool. I thought this film was pretty well done, and sometimes I think it gets hated on a little too much. When I asked other people, there were some people that ranked it really high, actually. One had it as the best film of the franchise, so one said it was the fourth best, fifth best, another fifth best, sixth best, and then, of course, some people said it was the worst one in the franchise. So again, another polarizing film, and as I got the results of this, it was kind of a common pattern. There's people that are fans of different movies, and, of this Friday the 13th franchise, you really find the movie that fits you, and X could either be at the top of your list, bottom of the list, or like mine, it could be about mid. But again, I really like this movie. It's funny, and it's fun. So, that's number 8. My number 7, and I think this might get some people a little mad, so get your pitchforks ready. My number 7 is Friday the 13th Part 3. Now, I used to really hold Part 3 really high up. It was one of the first Friday the 13th movies I've ever seen. So I've always kind of just enjoyed it in a way of pure nostalgia. But as I rewatched it, and as I rewatched the entire franchise, to me, Part 3, it kind of finds its footing with the formula of what the later movies are going to do. But Part 4 to me does it better. Part 4 is kind of the same thing, just with a better cast and better characters, better kills. Part 2, in my opinion, is scarier than Part 3. So, Part 3 is just in a really tough spot in the franchise to where it's like, okay, yeah, it does a lot of iconic things. Jason finds his mask. Shelly, you gotta love Shelly. Shelly cracks me up whenever I watch it. And there are fun kills, there's silly things that happen, the guy who likes to walk on his hands, him getting cut in half. One thing that kind of aggravates me is there's just that hippie couple that just kind of come out of nowhere, and I feel like they don't even really bond with the other teenagers or young adults that are partying. Again, they're just there as a joke. The 3D effects, they really stick out, and they've aged terribly. The guy doing the yo-yo right at the camera. When I put all these movies together, I can't put this movie higher than 2 or 4. Those, to me, are just superior movies. So Part 3 fell a bit for me. And that's why it's at number 7. My number 6 is Freddy vs. Jason. This movie is just a straight up popcorn flick. It's fun. From the title what you're getting. You're getting Freddy Krueger versus Jason Voorhees. The matchup everyone wanted to see forever, and we finally got it. And I think it's pretty well done. Their little intro of no one was afraid of Freddy Krueger anymore, so they had to get Jason Voorhees to come into the neighborhood to install fear into children. It's pretty much the perfect way to get this movie going. I don't think they could have done a better job with that. This movie really nailed the atmosphere of a Friday the 13th movie and Nightmare on Elm Street vibes. It did a really good job with that. There's parts where we're in the dream world. There's parts where we're in the actual real world. We see Jason, in his dream at Camp Crystal Lake. There's really good stuff in this movie. The final fights are awesome. Sometimes they get a bit cartoonish, but it's kind of the point. And even when they get cartoonish and you get the pinball effects, it still kind of makes me laugh. It's a fun movie to watch. I wish I could place it higher, but I was sitting there and I just could not put it above the other 5 that I have. So, it fell into number 6. I think it's a good, fun movie. But those ahead of it, if I'm looking for a Friday the 13th movie, I gotta put them higher. My number 5 is Friday the 13th, The Reboot. This movie actually rose the most for me on these rewatches. Something about it when I watched it a long time ago. I always said I did not care for it. When other people would bring it up, I'm like, I didn't like that reboot. I don't know what it was. I really don't. Because when I went to rewatch these, I mean, I kind of made a set list before I even started rewatching these. And I had this reboot like low, like 9 or 10 territory. And then when I finally rewatched it, I was like, wow, what was I thinking? Like, this was a great remake. It had so many Easter eggs from the past movies. It knew how to put characters in that were funny, that kind of resembled the past characters that we have gotten. You know, we got the guy who was just over the top, a douchebag. Him saying the line, "Your tits are stupendous." Absolutely hilarious. I was cracking up watching this film. There was one time it actually made me jump. The beginning is the best beginning, in my opinion, of the franchise. I mean, literally just that cold open where we're introduced to those characters. You think they're going to be our main characters throughout the entire movie. But no, Jason comes in and kills them all off. And then you get the title card. Like, totally unexpected. Great stuff. They don't bother with the Pamela Voorhees stuff. You get that in the beginning credit stuff. Middle of the movie's absolutely fun. The kills are fun. I just think this reboot's a blast. And that's why it's at number 5. My number 4 is Friday the 13th Part 5. And I know this might seem really high to some people, and I get it. Of the people that reached out, I think only about 2 to 3 had it in their top 6 or 7. The rest had it about mid or towards the bottom. So, I mean, I know this is probably a controversial placing here. But I really do like Part 5. It is just over the top. If you want silliness in a Friday the 13th movie, this is the one I would go to. A lot of people get mad about the whole Roy copycat killer thing. I could really care less. I get the disappointment. I get they did a whodunit movie, and they did the same exact thing they did in the first film, which I complained about when I put the first film as the 11th best film in the franchise. But for this movie, it just really doesn't bother me that much. I mean, he looks just like Jason. To me, it is Jason. He's got the mannerisms of Jason. The only difference is he's got a little blue triangle instead of the red triangle. And they do that little reveal at the end where they're like, oh, it was Roy, the ambulance driver. They act like it's this big shocking thing. And to me, it's just funny. It's one of the funny things I can just kind of laugh at in the franchise of how dumb it is. I mean, Roy going over the top with, like, putting the bald cap on his head so people think that he's actually Jason. Come on. I enjoy all the characters in this movie, the craziness of it. Ethel, her cursing every other word. Her son riding around on the dirt bike, screaming his head off. The over-the-top, just sleaziness of this movie. To me, it's just what I think of with a Friday the 13th movie. Reggie the Reckless is just great. The girl doing the hypno dance in her room before she gets killed. Tommy Jarvis suplexing people multiple times in this film as if he is a WWE wrestler himself. This film is pure entertainment to me. And that's why it's at number 4. My number 3 is Friday the 13th Part 2. This is the first movie that we actually have Jason Voorhees in the picture. Though he is Baghead Jason, I think Baghead Jason is a very cool look. It kind of drew inspiration from, I think it was A Town That Dreaded Sundown. And I'm sure that drew inspiration from like way back to like Ku Klux Klan and like scary images throughout history. The final girl in this film, Jenny, I think she's the best final girl in the franchise. Tommy Jarvis, in my opinion, is above her, but he's technically not a final girl, he's a final guy. So, if I had to line up all the final girls of this franchise, I would say Jenny's at the very top. She's tough, she tricks Jason, she's very smart. And to go along with the good characters, I think a lot of people reference Paul Holt. He's just a character a lot of people fall back to. There's a lot of characters in later movies that kind of resemble the Paul Holt figure, the male that oversees everything, but they're not. But they're no Paul. And also, to this movie's benefit, I do think this is the scariest movie of the franchise. It's a very dark movie, and again, I just think it has creepy vibes. So this would be my number 3 in the franchise. My number 2 is Friday the 13th Part 4. Now, like I said earlier, I think Part 4 takes everything that Part 3 did, and it just made it an overall better film. The kills are great here. I mean, Jason literally takes like a harpoon, I think it was, and like injects it into a guy's junk and then like fires it off, which basically ends him. I mean, there's some pretty gnarly kills in this film. And all the characters to me are great. Crispin Glover, him doing that dance. There's the twins that come in. They're fun. Barry holding the bear, watching old school adult films. Just crazy stuff. But I mean, I think this is just any Friday the 13th movie that follows the formula or, the typical plot of a Friday the 13th movie. This film does it the best. So that's why it's at number 2. I just got a really soft spot for number 4. I can't help it. So that means my number 1 is Friday the 13th Part 6. Jason Lives. This movie is technically the final conclusion to the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. And I think it is just the best film in this franchise, obviously. It's number 1. I mean, it's got a really good story. The girl, the sheriff's daughter, she does a great job playing the love interest in this movie. The sheriff himself, I like him. He's kind of a complicated character. At first you think he's just going to be this douchey cop, but then you kind of see where he's coming from, and he's just kind of a great character. And I mean, for me, I ended up liking him a lot. And I mean, his death was just tragic. Like, Jason just bent him in half. Gnarly stuff. The movie's tongue-in-cheek. I would say it's like the first movie that's tongue-in-cheek. It knows what it's doing. It's got the 007 opening. Great stuff. The gravedigger guy with his multiple jokes that break the fourth wall. The paintball crew, the guy who gets his face slammed into a tree, which makes a bloody smiley face. The other cop who does the whole shebang line. Whether it's silly or it's just a really cool scene like Jason standing on top of the RV, I think this movie is just the most entertaining one to watch. And that was kind of what I was basing my rankings off of. I was like, after watching all of them, which film would I rather go back to and watch again? And Part 6 is the one that stands out to me. Part 4 is great, Part 2 is great, Part 5 to me is great. But if I were to go back to 1, Part 6 is the one that sticks out to me. It's just good action, good kills, good laughs, great movie. And that's what makes it number 1. So that's my ranking of the Friday the 13th series. If you're still here with me, feel free to give this video a like. That would help get this video out to other people. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do that. And for all the people that have reached out to help, give their rankings, that was a really awesome thing to do. Again, I just want to see other people's opinions and seeing if there's anything I could pull out that was interesting. But I think the most interesting thing I found out is just there's a lot of differing opinions of Friday the 13th movies. A lot of movies were scattered from top to bottom to mid, and I mean, really the one consistency that I saw was that Jason Goes to Hell is the worst movie. Except that one person. That one person says otherwise. But yeah, let me give a few shout outs here though, while I'm here at the end. To all those people that reached out whenever I asked, what was your Friday the 13th ranking? Zombie X111, I guess that'd be 13. Wow. I'm going to leave that in there. 31 Enola MT, Gwiz 89, Stubbs Turner, Exyber Vox, Garbage Pantaloons, Chippers 4242, Flamboyant Flapage, Vegan Voorhees, Existing Future 114, Billy Mac 05, and Thin and Crispy 84. Those are just some of the people that reached out and gave me their rankings. I really appreciate it, guys. I just wanted to give you a shout out here at the end. And really anyone else that, follows these videos and, always comments, you know who you are. Once again, thanks again, guys. I do want to hit other franchises, and I do have plans for that coming. And yeah, so that's the end of my franchise ranking. And until next time.